Yeah. And, you know, they told me, they said, Masvidal said he's going to come up on site. And I said, well, where's Masvidal sitting? He said, well, he's 6 or 7 rows away from Masvidal. I said, well, if the guy has a ticket, let him sit in his seat and
find out precisely what is in that folder, he snarled, and get his people on the phone now, because after everything I said tonight, after everything this company has built, if Islam signs something without telling us, he stopped, shaking with barely contained fury. I will burn this entire thing to the ground. Phones started ringing, teams were put in motion, and the chaos just got bigger. And right in the middle of it all, Dana White, the president of the UFC, was getting ready for a showdown that could completely alter Islam Makhachev's career, redefine what it means to be a champion, and decide if the most dominant athlete in the sport had just risked everything the UFC had created for him. The storm was here. Dana, who is famous for his straightforward and charismatic style, did not pull any punches. We're all just going to have to wait and find out where this story goes over the next few months. Is there a chance they can fix this, or is this really the end of the road? Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to check out the other videos on your screen. So when someone asked Dana White about Islam Makhachev, what was his reply? I have no idea. We're definitely not mad at him. That was his public reaction to the bombshell news that Islam had just inked a brand new deal completely outside of the UFC. But here's the thing, according to a ton of reports, that cool, calm response was a total lie. Because behind closed doors, Dana is absolutely losing his mind. And it's not just that Islam is walking away. It's all about who he decided to sign with. Let's get into it. The evening it all fell apart. The feeling inside Madison Square Garden right after UFC 322 was like a perfectly choreographed victory celebration. You had the booming sound of a completely packed arena and the smooth, powerful operation of a company that just put on another event that smashed records. Dana White walked up to the podium with all the assurance of a guy who is used to shattering both numbers and what people expect. The press area was buzzing, cameras were flashing everywhere, and even before a single journalist could get a question out, Dana established his dominance. He said, "All right, attendance tonight was 26,600." He then immediately put it into a historical frame, making sure everyone in the room knew who was running the most famous arena on the planet. He added that it was the 3rd biggest gate in MSG's history, and that the UFC now had the number 1 through 5 spots, plus 7, 9, and 10 of all time at the Garden. He even predicted that within a couple more years, they'd own the entire top 10. This was the exact kind of opening you'd expect for a night that was supposed to be easy to predict, with a sold-out venue, insane revenue, and a main event that was totally one-sided. On the surface, the whole night seemed solid, managed, almost boringly normal. But at the very same time Dana was talking, a tiny notification popped up silently in the UFC's private administrative software, the one they use for everything from fighter schedules to their business paperwork. A red flag automatically appeared right next to Islam Makhachev's name. There was no explanation and no specifics, just a single category tag, external commercial contract, not UFC authorized. An alert like that almost never shows up. And when it does, it's intended for one man and one man only. The security detail, however, didn't give it to him right away. They held off. They are trained to hold off until after the press conference is over, unless the flag indicates a direct and immediate legal breach. This one was in a gray area. It was clearly important enough to be sent up the chain, but it was so unclear that interrupting the company president in the middle of a press event could create a massive, unnecessary scene. So that alert just sat in a supervisor's pocket while Dana kept talking completely in the dark. The journalists, of course, started off by asking about the fight, focusing on Islam Makhachev's showing in the headline bout. The champion had put on a suffocating and perfect performance, the kind of win that erases all questions even if it doesn't create much excitement. Dana openly conceded that it wasn't a thriller, but the admiration he showed next was crystal clear, and looking back now, it's a huge part of the drama that was building behind the curtain. Not the most exciting title fight you'll ever see, he confessed, but he then immediately followed up that admission with a line that carried way more weight. But let me tell you what, complete dominance. This guy's headed toward GOAT talk. Now, inside the UFC machine, that is way more than just a nice thing to say. GOAT talk is the signal that a fighter's power and influence are growing past what a normal champion has. It's a sign that the UFC has to start being very cautious, very strategic, and on high alert. And those exact words left Dana's mouth at the very second that UFC operations personnel were looking at a system alert connected to Islam. They understood perfectly what GOAT talk meant for keeping contracts stable, and they knew how catastrophic an unapproved outside deal could be. For now, the press event went on as usual. Journalists were asking about who was next, and Dana listed off who he thought were the most exciting options. A bunch of big-name contenders were challenging Islam, and every single one was a major moneymaker. He mentioned Usman, Shavkat, and Ilia Topuria were all making noise, which gave the company a ton of choices. And then came the question that now seems like a giant red flag in the story. A reporter asked if Islam had chatted with Dana after his victory. Dana's response, off the cuff and fast, fit perfectly with the secret crisis that was just starting to bubble up. Has he been through here yet, Islam? No. Dana didn't think anything of it. It's common for fighters to skip the media room, but the UFC ops team that was listening from the hallway felt a pit in their stomachs, because if Islam really had signed some outside business deal, he absolutely should have spoken to Dana or the internal team about it. His not being there suddenly had a brand new, ominous context. Dana kept on taking questions. When someone brought up the highly anticipated White House event, he stressed that Islam was for sure being looked at as a possible main eventer. So could Islam end up at the White House? It's definitely a possibility, he stated. While the public saw this as high praise, inside the UFC, this was about to become the core of the problem. A fighter who is about to headline the most ambitious show the company has ever put on cannot be tied to any outside business deals without the UFC's explicit permission. But Dana was still unaware, so he talked about Valentina Shevchenko, Jorge Masvidal, and a handful of other fighters. He even took on the chaotic situation with Bo Nickel. With his usual blunt style, he then moved on to Islam's incredible winning streak, which tied Anderson Silva's record. Islam Makhachev ties his record for 16 consecutive wins. He even told the story about Khabib's wild reaction, saying, "Khabib came up to me freaking out and screaming, wrapped him over the head with both the belts." All these little things were important. Islam's stock was rising higher than ever, not just as a competitor, but as a core piece around which the UFC could build its entire promotional strategy. And all the while, that internal flag was still unread. As the event went on, Dana spoke about the ugly confrontation with Dylan Danis. "They told me Masvidal said he's going to come up on site. If the guy has a ticket, let him sit in his seat." And then with total authority he said, "You will never see Dylan Danis at a UFC fight, ever again." These remarks show exactly how Dana reacts when he feels caught off guard or challenged. The UFC employees holding that alert in the corridor knew precisely how he was going to respond to any kind of surprise. He kept answering questions about rankings, pound-for-pound arguments, and the UFC's plans for global growth, stating again with total conviction that Jon Jones was still the greatest of all. Yes, Jon Jones is still the GOAT. Whether you like it or not, he talked about the amazing energy from the crowd in France, Dana's target markets, and the depth of his roster, showing he was in complete control of the company's path forward. It was only after the very last question that Dana finally walked away from the cameras and went backstage. That's when the operations supervisor at last came up to him, holding a piece of paper with the alert printed on it. Dana grabbed it, looked at the top line, and just froze. It said, "Unauthorized external contract, registered, Makhachev, Islam." The meaning was instant and catastrophic. In the UFC's universe, a champion is not allowed to have separate commercial deals that haven't been reviewed, cleared, and built into the company's strict legal structure. And Islam, the undefeated, dominant, on his way to GOAT status champion of the world, hadn't told a soul. No discussion, no request, no heads up, absolutely nothing. Dana just stared at the text, reading it over and over, as a deep anger started to boil just under his calm exterior. Everyone standing near him knew that it was the exact same face he made right before he dropped the hammer in the infamous past incident with another fighter. But this time, what was at stake was so much bigger. Islam Makhachev wasn't just another fighter. He was the key to the UFC's biggest plans for the future. And now all of those plans were at risk. Dana took a slow breath, put the paper down, and asked the one question that was on everyone's mind. What contract? Nobody had an answer. The blow-up was coming. That was the mystery. The second Dana White uttered the words, "What contract?" the whole vibe in the hallway changed. Backstage at a UFC event runs like a military command center that's just pretending to be a sports arena, with assistants talking into earpieces, security managing traffic flow, and executives moving through a labyrinth of secure doorways. But all of that came to a dead stop when Dana was holding that sheet of paper. The atmosphere got thick around him, and even the people who had no clue what was going on could feel the electricity in the air. Dana wasn't yelling, he wasn't walking around or swearing, he just stood there completely motionless, looking at the alert like if he read it enough times, the text would somehow change. It did. The supervisor who brought him the message, a guy who had been through 6 different major scandals and had worked for Dana for almost 10 years, cleared his throat and said the one thing no employee ever wants to say. We might have a situation. Dana's eyes got narrow. His voice sank to that near whisper he always uses right before he completely loses it. Who flagged it? The supervisor gestured down the corridor towards the operations center. And with that, Dana started walking, and walking fast. People scrambled out of his way to avoid getting bulldozed. His staff hurried behind him, trying to keep pace but not having the nerve to ask what was happening. They all knew better. Inside the ops office, a group of analysts were hunched over their monitors, which showed fighter data, contract logs, and compliance paperwork. When Dana walked in, they all jumped to attention. Pull up Makhachev, he commanded. In just a few seconds, Islam's complete file took over the main screen. All his recent activity was totally normal: fight contract, medical check, weigh-in results, everything was in order. But then, down at the very bottom, lit up in yellow, was the problem. External commercial contract, pending registration, not UFC authorized. Dana got closer. Click it. The analyst just shook his head. We can't. There's no document attached yet. Just the trigger. That just made Dana even more furious. So what you're telling me is that our system gets a flag about an outside contract for our world champion on the biggest night of the year, and you have no idea what in the hell it is? The analyst stumbled over his words. It means the contract is real, but the originator hasn't sent the details to our system yet. This usually happens if a partner entity files paperwork before they let the UFC know. Partner entity, Dana shot back. Who the hell is partnering with our champion without us? Total silence. The kind of silence that makes your stomach turn. One of the directors in operations cautiously stepped in. Technically, it could be a lot of things. A branding deal, a local sponsorship, maybe an outside promotion, or media deal. Dana shut him down. He doesn't sign a single thing without it coming through us first. Nothing. He is aware of that. His entire team is aware of that. Are you trying to tell me Islam signed a deal tonight while his title defense was on the air? The room was quiet. They didn't need to say anything. Dana turned around, breathing heavily, trying to control the wave of adrenaline and pure rage building inside him. His thoughts flashed back to the press conference. Every quote, every single moment where he was talking about Islam being in the GOAT conversation. He had put Islam on a pedestal, basically boosting his value in public and solidifying his path to greatness. He had talked about the White House show, about Islam maybe headlining the most important card the company had ever done. And through all of that, Islam never came backstage. He never checked in. He didn't even walk past the media area. He had just vanished after the fight, supposedly to go celebrate. But right now, his absence felt calculated. All the pieces were clicking together into a puzzle that Dana didn't want to solve. He turned back to the analyst. When did the alert get timestamped? One of them scrolled through the log. It came in during the press conference, just about the same time you mentioned Islam in relation to the White House show. That timing was no accident. Dana's focus sharpened, and nobody has made contact with him. The room traded worried looks. He's already left the building, the supervisor said softly. Right after his medical clearance, he skipped the media, skipped the VIP area, and didn't check in with anybody. He just got into a car with his crew. Dana's face hardened. A champion bailing on the biggest night of his life without even a word to the organization was weird enough. But leaving just moments before a contract alert hit, that was a whole different story. He breathed out through his nose, fighting to keep his cool. Get Hunter, he ordered. Get PR on the line and get me legal. Right now. People scattered immediately. As the calls were being made, Dana's mind replayed the entire night in fragments. The praise, the stats, the talk about Islam's dominance and his pound-for-pound status. The story about Khabib putting the belts on his head. All the expectations for Islam's career, the building hype for massive fights with Usman or Shafkat, or Ilya, and most of all, the push for the historic White House card. Every single one of those things had pushed Islam's leverage, Up to a point that fighters normally only get to at the very end of their careers, not while they're in the middle of a title reign. And a fighter with that kind of leverage becomes a prime target for outside companies trying to cash in on his success. But Islam wasn't known for being reckless or impulsive. He wasn't the kind of guy to just sign a deal behind the UFC's back. So if he really did sign something, that meant the deal had to be huge, way bigger than anything the UFC could have imagined, big enough that his own team thought they could get away with hiding it, at least for a little while. That idea lit a fire of genuine rage deep inside him. Hunter Campbell showed up in under 2 minutes, still in his post-fight jacket and holding papers from another issue he was handling. "What's going on?" he asked. Dana just showed him the paper. Hunter read it, and then read it again, much slower this time. Dana just nodded. Hunter got closer to the monitor. "Do we have any idea what kind of external deal this is? Media, endorsement, broadcast?" "No specifics," the analyst repeated. "Just that some company filed a registration for a signed contract with Islam, and our system flagged it because he's a current champion." Hunter stroked his chin. Whoever submitted it might not know that it automatically checks against fighters who have championship restrictions. Dana slammed his fist on the table. Or they knew, and they just didn't give a damn. Hunter didn't try to argue. The two of them had weathered endless storms together, from John Jones's suspensions, to Conor McGregor's antics, and the Khabib bus attack. They had seen entire events fall apart in a single night. But this situation was uniquely dangerous. Champions are bound by airtight contracts. An unapproved deal, depending on what it was, could cancel fights, ruin events, or even stop Islam from headlining the White House card altogether. Dana started pacing. "Islam is a huge part of our plans for the next 2 years. We're setting up Spain, we're getting the White House locked in. We're wrapping up the Paramount deal. We can't have a champion making secret deals behind our backs. No, not a chance." And then the most terrifying possibility hit him. Hunter asked, "Or could it be another promotion?" Dana froze. The whole room stopped breathing. Hunter kept going, his voice steady but serious. "We've seen other organizations make big moves when a fighter's value shoots up. Even offers that don't go anywhere can set off registration flags, if they file the paperwork ahead of time, thinking they're going to get the deal done. You're suggesting they leaked a contract filing before Islam even left the arena?" he said slowly. Hunter nodded. "To build pressure, to create leverage, or to publicly claim him before he has a chance to deny it." That thought exploded in Dana's head. A pre-filed contract, a public relations trap, somebody trying to make it seem like Islam had already signed with someone else, even if he had. A move designed to create instant headlines, panic, and chaos. Dana's voice became dangerously quiet. "Find out who filed it." The operations staff got right on it, digging through signature data, registry info, partner codes, anything that could trace the source. As they worked, an assistant ran into the office holding up a phone. "Dana, you have to see this." Dana grabbed the phone. On the screen was a social media post that was already making the rounds with MMA insiders. It wasn't huge yet, but it was about to be. The post was claiming that Islam Makhachev had just signed a massive external deal with a major company outside the UFC. There were no details or confirmation, but it was more than enough to start a firestorm of rumors, and enough to make the problem 100 times worse. Hunter looked over his shoulder. "Who's the source?" Dana zoomed in. It was a journalist known for breaking deals early. Sometimes he was right, and sometimes it was a total disaster. The post said, "Breaking. Islam Makhachev has reportedly signed a new contract outside the UFC. More to come." Dana's expression turned to granite. The problem had just gone from a private system alert to a public inferno, and Islam was completely unreachable. Hunter looked at him. "We have to get in front of this, right now." Dana just shook his head. "Not until we find out what the hell is really going on." He turned to face the room, his voice rising, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Find Islam, find his team, find out who filed this contract. I don't care what time it is or where in the world they are. Call every single manager, every contact we have. I need answers before this thing explodes." He stopped, breathing heavily, his anger just barely contained. "And when we find out the truth," Dana snarled, "somebody is going to get absolutely destroyed." Everyone scattered. Phones started ringing, keyboards were clacking, and people were sprinting down the halls. The UFC's entire operation was now in full emergency mode. And in the middle of it all was the one man who needed the truth the most, Dana White, just waiting, fuming, and knowing that the very next phone call could change everything for the UFC's most dominant champion. The explosion was still on its way, but it was coming. The folder that would change everything. The more the UFC's operations team investigated, the more the entire mess transformed from a simple system alert into a massive, unfolding disaster. Phones were ringing off the hook. Compliance staff were rushing between different offices. Every couple of minutes, someone would run in with another piece of the story. But none of it was enough to figure out what was happening, and each new detail just added to a crisis that should never have happened. Hunter Campbell was pacing by the operations desk as the analysts sifted through digital files. At the same time, Dana was standing by the main monitor, just staring at Islam's profile, like the screen itself was keeping secrets from him. The quotes from his own press conference were bouncing around in his head, making a mockery of the control he thought he had over his champion's future. When he had said, "This guy's headed toward GOAT talk," it wasn't just hype, it was a calculated move. That kind of talk raises a fighter's market value, which is precisely why the UFC wraps its champions in incredibly strict, exclusive contracts. A champion is not allowed to independently negotiate with any company that might want to use their name, their image, or their schedule. But here they were, with a mystery contract filed somewhere. As the team looked through different international business registries, one of the analysts stopped cold. "Dana, we got something." Dana was at his side in a second. The analyst was pointing to a line of code that showed where the filing came from. It had been routed through a European business registry, one that's frequently used by promotions and event organizers from other countries. Hunter leaned over. "Which one?" The analyst paused. "I can't be sure about the specific company yet, but this registry is used by several groups that have tried to sign Islam in the past." Dana's expression didn't change. "Spit it out." The analyst took a breath. "It could be one of the huge Middle Eastern event conglomerate." The entire room went silent, because that meant this was something way bigger than a standard sponsorship. The big event organizers in the Middle East are known for putting on combat sports mega shows with budgets that the UFC doesn't even try to compete with. We're not talking about small brands or local gyms. These are organizations that have the kind of money to make offers that change people's lives. Offers that could easily convince a world champion to bend, or maybe even shatter, UFC rules. Dana's jaw tightened. "They wouldn't have the nerve to file something before talking to us." Hunter replied calmly, but with a seriousness that made the whole room feel heavy. "If Islam's team was what to them behind our backs, and if they thought their deal was protected from UFC's reach, they just might." That felt like a body blow to Dana. He thought back to another moment, one that suddenly seemed so much more important than it had during the press conference. Has he been through here yet? Islam? No. Back then, it meant nothing. Fighters miss media all the time. But now, his absence seemed planned. It felt intentional, coordinated, and even worse, perfectly timed. Hunter turned to the room. "We have to get his manager on the phone." "We've already been trying," an assistant yelled from across the room. "His phone is turned off. His team says he took off with Islam right after the fight, and hasn't called back." Dana's famous temper finally snapped. "What do you mean he hasn't called back? He represents a current world champion. There is no way his phone is off tonight." Nobody said a word. Then, another analyst got their attention. "Sir, we tracked the filing's timestamp back through the foreign server. It matches up perfectly with the exact moment that reporter tweeted the story." He gestured to the social media post, which was still up on a nearby screen. This wasn't just a confirmation, it was a power play. It was a strategic move. It was a shot fired before the UFC even knew there was a weapon. This wasn't an accidental leak, this was a deliberate attack. At that very second, an employee hurried in holding a tablet. "Dana, the media wants a statement. The story is getting bigger." Dana turned around slowly. His voice was quiet, sharp and laser-focused. "We are not saying a single damn thing. But the rumors, I don't give a damn about rumors," Dana interrupted. "We don't say anything until we know what's real. If this is a real deal, we'll take care of it in-house. If it's fake, we're not going to give any oxygen to some pathetic stunt." Hunter agreed with a nod. "No comment until we know who filed it." They kept digging. Every new discovery just made the situation more tense. As the minutes ticked by, the potential fallout got bigger and bigger. The White House show, global expansion plans, their ESPN deal, the Paramount partnership, the UFC's iron grip on the entire world of combat sports. All of it relied on keeping its champions under control. And that's when another, even worse realization hit Dana like a bolt of lightning. A 16-fight win streak, tying Anderson Silva's record. That level of utter dominance turns a fighter into a worldwide brand. He wasn't just valuable to the UFC, he was valuable to everyone. Boxing promoters, mega arenas, even foreign governments looking to host major sporting events. Any one of them could offer him a ridiculous amount of money. And if Islam had even considered one of those deals, for just a second, it would explain everything. More people started crowding into the room. Legal experts, compliance officers, PR reps, the office turned into a chaotic hub of activity. Dana just stood in the center of it all, not moving, taking it all in, putting the pieces together, and waiting for the next bit of information that could change the course of the entire night. Another employee went up to Hunt. "Sir, we've identified the originating office." The contract was filed through an agency in Europe that's known to represent international event venues. Dana's eyes were burning with the rage of a man who had just been completely blindsided on the most critical night of the year.